Hello and welcome back to another Night Guys gaming video. Today I'm doing a review of the Nova Finals game between Aeldari and World Eaters. Let's take a look at the list. Folger Piles was taking the Aeldari Warhost detachment. He is the reigning world champ in Warhammer and is actually local to my area in the Dayton, Ohio area, so it's really awesome to see locals, of course, doing so well in the competitive scene. For characters, Folger took Eldrad, Fuegan, Janezar, Lycus, and Malgan Raw. And Fuegan, Janezar, and Lycus have become basically ubiquitous when it comes to Aeldari lists. He also took 3 Corsair Void Reavers for battle line, just sets of 5 mans, a Wave Serpent for dedicated transport, 3 sets of Swooping Hawks, 5 each, Fire Dragons, a 10 man to go with Fuegan, of course, 5 Howling Banshees to go with Janezar, 3 sets of 5 Warp Spiders, one which would be going with Lycus, 5 Dark Reapers to go with Malgan Raw, 5 Rangers for Infiltrate, and then a Falcon to transport and give the Dark Reapers a bonus on their wound roll. The World Eaters player brought Berserker Warband, and he was Brian Doherty. For characters, he brought the Daemon Prince of Kharn with the favorite of Kharn enhancement, Lord of Bakadas, Kharn the Betrayer, Master of Executions with a Berserker Glaive, 2 sets of Kharn Berserkers of 10 mans, 2 Chaos Rhinos for dedicated transports, 3 sets of Chaos Spawn, 2 each, 2 sets of 3-man 8-bound, 2 sets of Jackals with 10 in each, and then lastly 2 Forge Fiends. This game had some pivotal moments and some very interesting things that happened. I also thought that it was a really good display of how to play Aeldari into a faction like World Eaters or just in general aggressive factions. And I've had a lot of people say that that's been a pretty difficult matchup for them. And I wanted to see if we could glean some information from this game to pull off the wins against such an aggressive faction. I did want to keep this pretty short, and so I'm not going to be covering every single move and every single action that the players took, but I really want to focus on the important concepts and some of the important moves and things that happen during the game so that we can really focus in on what might help us as we continue to try to improve ourselves. I think watching and reviewing games is a great way to improve as a player. By watching players who are really at the top of the game, you can give you some really good ideas of maybe what you're not doing or things that you are doing that you shouldn't be. And so hopefully by reviewing this game, this will help you with finding some of those flaws and fixing them in your own games to become a better and more competitive player. If this kind of content is something you enjoy or appreciate, let me know in the comments. If you have any ideas for other factions that you would like to see reviewed or other types of games, definitely let me know, and I would love to take that into consideration because a lot of the ideas I have for videos have come from recommendations or requests from viewers. With all that in mind, let's hop into TTS and take a look at the game. I recreated the game as closely as I could in Tabletop Simulator to kind of follow along with what the players did. So let's hop into Tabletop Simulator. All right, so let's hop straight into deployment and take a quick look at what each player did and then discuss some of the important decisions that they were making when they did this deployment. I did not see exactly who went first and how the deployment went. It wasn't on the stream, but this is how they ended up, and we'll take a quick look exactly where they put their units and possibly why. The World Eaters player had Lord of Bakadas and Deep Strike, and then he had 3 sets of Chaos Spawn ready to scout move forward onto each objective. He had his 8-bound here and here that were ready to scout, and then his Berserkers with Kharn and the Master of Executions and the Rhinos. Kharn was the more central Rhino here. And then the Forge Fiends were also on each side, ready to go different directions to apply pressure across the whole board. The World Eaters player went very wide and wanted to pressure the entire board and not just focus on the triangle here that a lot of times you will see players do, where they just kind of focus on their natural expansion, the center, and their home objective. World Eaters player, and a lot of times the melee aggressive armies will not play that style. They will go aggressive and they'll put pressure on you pretty much everywhere. And lastly, of note, the World Eaters player has some Jackals on the objective to sticky it, and then some more Jackals to go aggressive to the opponent's natural expansion and try to sticky it as well, and has plenty of resources ready to help engage on either their own natural expansion and then also the center. Now going to the Aeldari player, so what Folger is looking to do here, it seems, is move his Void Reavers this direction, have some Void Reavers that can kind of be versatile, possibly go to the center if needed, but also support the natural expansion and then some more Void Reapers that are going to be going to the opponent's natural expansion. So the scout moves with a lot of OC. We have ways to try to limit our opponent's scoring of primary objective with these Corsair Void Reapers. We have the Rangers sitting here, and this is something that you almost always want to do against very aggressive, especially melee aggressive armies, is have some kind of infiltration block to slow down their scout moves. The Chaos Spawn and the 8-bound, we want to make sure that they're not getting really good scout moves to stage, say, into this ruin here, and we want to make sure that they don't get into our army quite as fast. And so we can use the Rangers to kind of put this little 9-inch barrier basically here to slow down the World Eaters player from this whole kind of area. Another important thing to think about is this space over here is really important, especially for the Forge Fiend and the Rhino to try to be going aggressive into this objective. And the Rhino is probably going to be going and staging inside this ruin to allow the berserkers to come out their 3 inches, and then that'll give them a lot of threat range between the natural expansion but then also the center. And so we have to be very careful about letting the Rhino get in there, and hopefully we can stop him from doing that if we go first, and the way we do that will be with a move block. So the Rangers will move up here to do a move block and kind of just block all of this, of the World Eaters army, back for a whole turn, which allows us to do some staging and be comfortable going to do some scoring and a few other things while our opponent has to basically just sit and wait to deal with the Rangers before they can start moving forward. It's a very powerful way to deal with World Eaters in particular because they don't have flying units like Blood Angels, for example, so they don't have the guys with jump packs going everywhere. All of these things have to follow all the rules of not being within engagement range of opponents' models and cannot go over top of them. And so this move block here is very effective and will stop all of these units from being able to move forward. So that's something that you generally want to set up and look for these kind of choke points like this, and also important staging areas like this, that if you can move block and stop them from getting there, you effectively freeze them and delay the opponent's aggression for quite a bit of time. I'm going to turn the camera a little bit here. We see we have the Fire Dragons and the Banshees are basically escorting the Wave Serpent with the Fire Dragons in it. We have all the Warp Spiders sitting inside this ruin, nice and far back, but they still have the speed to be able to get to the center objective, but also the natural expansion if they need to. The Swooping Hawks are even further back, but they're set up to go this direction, possibly even up here to start staging for the center, and these ones can even advance and go up this way to eventually help support either the center or go into the opponent's natural expansion. And so even though the Swooping Hawks are starting so far back, they're so fast that we can get them staged in one turn to be able to attack all sorts of different places on the board. We have Eldrad right inside here. He's right outside the ruin, and he's just going to be sitting back scoring CP for us, and we're going to keep him safe as possible throughout most of the game so that he can generate CP for us. Warhost is very CP hungry, and so Eldrad really helps with having enough CP to do everything we want to do. The Falcon with Malgan Raw could go up this direction, but is often going to go this way and kind of stage in here so that the Reapers can come out into the ruin and get nice shots here and even across here, or move slightly further and bring the Reapers out here so they can get shots down the line and then also diagonal. And so this is really a nice place for the Falcon to be so that the Dark Reapers have the ability to go all sorts of different directions, have some really nice long shooting lanes. So we are often going to see this Falcon head this direction to apply that pressure. This place for the Wave Serpent in particular is also really helpful because the Wave Serpent is very safe from most anything the opponent can do. This Forge Fiend eventually, between moving a couple times, could get over here to get a shooting line down this way, but it's not going to happen right away. And so we can have the Wave Serpent here ready to go, and this Wave Serpent has the ability to move forward and then drop off the Fire Dragons inside this ruin if need be, or over here to get all their shooting into really important targets. And so it's just a major threat that the World Eaters player has to constantly be worried about and deal with, and even be careful that if he gets the Forge Fiend all the way over here, if this wave serpent is just a little closer, it could possibly move and then drop out the fire dragons and roast this Forge Fiend anyways. So this wave serpent's going to be a very important part of the game, and the Howling Banshees are making sure that it can hopefully stay safe for long enough for the fire dragons to do their job. Folger can do his secondaries. Each of the Corsair Void Reavers are able to go to an objective and touch one, so it's really nice to be able to have something cheap and disposable get to each objective, just in case you draw something like Tempting Target or Cleanse or any of those things. We want to make sure we can get units on objectives and score our secondaries and apply that pressure to our opponent to have to answer us on any of the objectives that we choose. So just make sure when you're deploying, that is something that you keep in mind. I don't want to go too deep into deployment, so we're going to continue on with the game and talk about some of the other really cool things that happened and important parts of the game that really changed how the game went. Okay, so Fulcher ended up going first, and so we can see that he scout moved his Void Reavers forward, and we have the other Void Reavers also scouted. So they did this move here, these guys moved up this way, and then these Void Reavers moved up this way for some aggressive plays. And that was it for the scout move on his end. And as far as the World Eaters player, he just left his spawn here because they couldn't move due to the Rangers. The 8-bound also stayed, they really couldn't go anywhere. And lastly, the Chaos spawn here moved this direction to get ready to attack the natural expansion in case these Void Reavers come onto this objective. And so this was a scout move, and let's get into the first turn. All right, so this was Folger's movement phase, and he did get Tempting Target, so he moved the Void Reavers up here to touch this objective that was selected as a Tempting Target. He has a blaster back here, and I couldn't tell in the game whether he shot at the Rhino or shot at the Chaos Spawn, but either way, make sure you're getting use out of the blaster and the Corsair Void Reavers. It is a powerful weapon that, when it pops off, can sometimes make a big difference in the game and do a lot of damage to an important target. Pretty much everything here just stood still, and everything here also didn't really move. The only thing that did was some Swooping Hawks went this direction to support the natural expansion. The Falcon, of course, went this way, as we talked about. The Dark Reapers got out to take shots into the Rhino, and they will be going back into the transport, and their Corsairs are on the objective to hold it and force the opponent to come answer. And the Rangers did the move block, which means that the opponent really isn't going to be able to get to the Corsairs. They can't move through or past these Rangers. And so effectively, this guarantees that we score our points on this objective and we'll be scoring on our home objective. This is the Scorched Earth mission, and so Folger only needs to hold 2 objectives to make sure he's scoring effectively the max primary that he can without burning an objective, which you can't do in turn 1 anyways. And so he is going to score his 10 points pretty much guaranteed because he's got this objective and this objective on lockdown. And the last thing I just want to point out is just how important this move block is. It freezes hundreds and hundreds of points of the opponent's army in place. It allows us to stage and set up for a really good attack. And it basically guarantees that we score primary, which is a really good use of these Rangers. If the Rangers weren't here and the opponent was able to just move this direction, there's no way these Corsair Void Reavers stay alive, and it means that we don't score these 5 victory points. So in one sense, you can consider that these Rangers were 55 points used to score us 5 victory points, which is a great use of 55 points of our army. Okay, and with the movement phase done, let's take a look at how shooting went. Okay, so there was some shooting. I don't know what the Rangers shot into, or if he just shot some of the Jackals possibly. The Dark Reapers that were in the ruin shot the Rhino. The Rhino did go down to 5 wounds, so he cut it in half. And like I said, I don't know if the blaster here was able to shoot into the Chaos Spawn or the Rhino and do any damage. I'm guessing not, but the way the stream was, I couldn't tell exactly what had happened. And so this is basically how the end of the first turn went. The World Eaters player has some Chaos Spawn and 8-bound stage in the ruin. Rhino's damaged. A lot of this up here is frozen in place, and a lot of the opponent's deployment zone and this area is kind of screened. These Void Reavers probably aren't going to last long with these Chaos Spawn looking at them to get back onto the objective, and that is basically it. Folger did score his 5 points for Tempting Target and 4 points for Extend Battle Lines. A fantastic start and really nice secondaries to draw first turn. A lot of times with Aeldari, when you're going into a very aggressive melee-oriented army, you're going to want to score as many points as possible. He didn't just try to score 4 points because he was worried about his opponent getting a challenger card. We really want to go ahead and just score maximum points a lot of times in this kind of matchup, because you don't know how hard or easy it's going to be for you to score some of those points later in the game when you're pressured so heavily and you got to do some killing. Sometimes you need to make sure you get a lot of your points early on, even if it does mean your opponent may get a challenger card. Now that said, if you had to choose between scoring 7 points and 5 points, I'd probably go ahead and just go with 5. Doesn't mean you have to try to give your opponent the challenger card, but the difference between scoring 5 points and 9 points is pretty big. I would definitely go ahead and score your max points if possible. Okay, with first turn done, let's take a look at the World Eater player's first turn. Okay, so this is the World Eater player's first turn and the end of his movement phase. These units did not move. The Jackals are kind of screening in kind of an arc shape to screen out part of his deployment zone. The Forge Fiend moved this direction. The Daemon Prince moved this way. And the Chaos Spawn moved to attack the Void Reavers. The Chaos Spawn over here moved to put pressure on more of the Aeldari army. But this was a pretty straightforward just movement phase. Some things were shifted around. Not much moved up here because of the Rangers. And that's basically it. So we'll go ahead and get into what happened at the charge and fight phase and kind of just get through the first turn real quickly. All right, so the Chaos Spawn charged and took care of the Rangers. The Chaos Spawn over here charged and took care of the Corsair Void Reavers around on the objective. And that was basically it. So the World Eaters player, unfortunately, did not draw great secondaries. He got Assassination and Engage on all fronts. He was able to get Engage on all fronts in 3 board areas because he had the Chaos here, Chaos Spawn here, and of course his own board quarter. So he was in 3 board quarters, got 2 points, and then did not get Assassination, which would have been basically impossible. And so he only scored 2, so he will get a challenger card, and that will be the end of round 1. So at the top of round 2, Folger's going to score 10 primary points. He draws Bring It Down an Overwhelming Force. So this is the end of the movement phase of Folger in his second turn, top of round 2 here. And we can see that the Falcon moved forward, dropped off the Reapers to take this beautiful shot this direction, and we'll get 4 rerolls to wound, of course, because the Falcon's peeked out and also going to be able to shoot the Forge Fiend as well. The Swooping Hawks are kind of just sitting back out of the way, ready to support. The Corsairs are still on the objective. Lord Invocatus was deep struck right in here with Rapid Ingress at the end of Folger's movement phase. And so that's going to be a major threat, and we can see that the opponent's really pointing a lot of the army into our natural expansion. And this is a big problem because if the opponent gets us off our natural expansion, it's going to be really hard for us to ever hold the center, and the opponent has their natural expansion, which is going to be easier for them to defend. And so if the opponent is controlling or at least contesting all these objectives and holding their own, then we're only scoring 5 points on our home objective, and we're going to start to get further and further behind. So we have to make sure that we don't get overrun on all the objectives. We can see that Folger put some Warp Spiders up here and did a little bit of possible move blocking. He wanted to stay out of the sight lines of this Forge Fiend and this Forge Fiend, and so the spiders kind of arc over here just to kind of stop the opponent from moving through the ruins here and also getting some shots off with the spiders. Our best opportunity for Bring It Down, of course, is going to be this Forge Fiend, and so the Dark Reapers and Falcon are really going to put a lot of pressure and very likely do a lot of damage, if not outright destroy the Forge Fiend. We have pretty good chances to wreck the Forge Fiend here because of the help with the Falcon, getting the Bright Lance Pulse Lasers into it, and then the Dark Reapers shooting into it will very likely just finish it off. The Fire Dragons were dropped off to be able to take shots into the Chaos Spawn here and shouldn't have much issue finishing them off. We have the Warp Spiders basically there to do the last bit of extra damage if for some reason we don't get enough damage, since only 3 of the Fire Dragons and Fuegan can see the Chaos Spawn. We did move the Corsairs from here over to this direction, and we moved some more Spiders this way to stage and get ready to attack natural expansion of our opponent and the center. And so we have even more kind of crowded up in this area here. We left the Hawks and Eldrad and the other Hawks, and then Lycus sitting back on our home objective. We can see that Overwhelming Force should be pretty easy for us to score at least 3 points on by taking out these Chaos Spawn, and then Bring It Down. We have good chances with the Dark Reapers and Falcon to take out the Forge Fiend. So looking pretty good to score our secondaries. We still have this objective touched with the Corsairs. The Spiders are on this one as well. So Folger's looking to score, bring it down with the Reapers and Falcon and overwhelming force against these Chaos Spawn by taking them out. And you can see that he's still respecting the opponent's army. If you look at the speed of World Eaters, we know that they're very fast. They can get into a lot of the board with their advance and charges. The Chaos Spawn are going to be able to get here for sure. The Rhino can drop off the Berserkers, which could then, with the CP, advance possibly up to here and get some charges. That could be kind of scary. The Berserkers could come out here from this Rhino and do possibly an advance and charge. And I wanted to point this out because I would be concerned that some players would want to advance the Banshees and try to take out these Chaos Spawn to max out the points on overwhelming force. But that's only 2 extra victory points. And we really need these Banshees here to protect this area with their heroic intervention. We can't afford to leave this to go over here for multiple reasons. The Forge Fiend would light the Banshees up, which would be horrible. And then the Berserkers could come out along with the 8-bound and basically move this direction and take out a lot of our army here with their speed. And so there's really no reason, and it would be a horrible error to move these Banshees towards this objective. So just make sure you don't get baited into trying to score a couple extra victory points by doing something like that. Stay focused on what your plan is, what your goal is. We have a lot of space we're giving the opponent because of how fast his army is. Once we take out these Chaos Spawn, then if you look, we're trying to give a nice little area here of not having really any of our units within a certain range of our opponent. And over here, yes, the Chaos Spawn will be able to get in, but we're trying to keep these units as far back from this main part of the army as possible. So we're basically have this arc here where all of our units are as far back. You can see that Folger really was trying to keep his units back and out of charge ranges of the opponent, and only engaging with specific units that could either get back into a transport, or he knew he was basically sacrificing the Spiders to be able to go do something important. So make sure with these aggressive armies that are fast that you are respecting their speed and range and not just moving your units forward into positions where they're just going to get wrecked by the Berserkers or the 8-bound. So let's take a look at how the shooting went. All right, so as you can see, the Chaos Spawn are taken care of, so we will be scoring our points on overwhelming force. And the Forge Fiend is gone. But not only is the Forge Fiend gone, the Jackals are gone. And there was even some damage done to the 8-bound here. Malgan Raw's kind of collateral damage that he does can be very helpful. And I don't know, because of the way the stream was, exactly how the Jackals died. If it was a combination, I think, of the Spiders possibly. And maybe the Falcon did enough damage to the Forge Fiend that he didn't have to shoot all of the Reapers into the Forge Fiend. However it worked out, the Forge Fiend died, the Jackals are all dead, and that was a really nice play for the Aeldari player. That really helps limit the pressure, and taking out 2 units on this side is really helpful to lessen what's coming into this natural expansion. Now, unfortunately, we still have Chaos Spawn, Lord of Mikadas, a Rhino full of Berserkers, and 8-bound still looking this direction, and so it's definitely not over yet. There's a huge amount of force coming in, and so we'll see how the World Eaters player will respond. And the last thing that I just want to mention real quickly again is just how important the Rangers move block here was. It allowed us to score our objective. It slowed down a lot of the opponent's army for an entire turn, and this play where we shot into the Forge Fiend here may well not have happened if we wouldn't have basically frozen it in place by putting the Rangers. And because it was frozen there effectually, the time spent bringing the Falcon up here and then moving up here to be able to get the shots into the Forge Fiend probably wouldn't have happened, or we would have had to have been more careful if we would have let our opponent move forward towards our natural expansion. We really couldn't afford to put the Falcon here. And so by doing this play, this move block, not only did we score points, but we also allowed ourselves the opportunity to take some really important shots into something important in our opponent's army. So make sure you're not overlooking the value of move blocking and stopping your opponent from moving out of a position where you could possibly get some really good damage into them at a distance by a play like this. So this is the World Eater player's movement phase, and you can see that is some major aggression on this part of the board, but it's not a full go turn because the Howling Banshees are really just kind of holding the opponent from wanting to send much this direction, and that's why they are so important in this matchup. So make sure your Howling Banshees are doing something important, they're guarding something important, and they're applying threat to a lot of the board that your opponent's going to have to be respectful of, and can't just go charging in at you because they're going to lose too many resources if they do. And so make sure we are considering that, and you can see how aggressive the opponent went on this, and this is what you're going to see a lot from melee aggressive armies, is a massive movement of a bunch of their army into specific parts of the board. And basically we had the Forge Fiend move this direction to get ready to move out and take shots here, which means that this kind of safe staging space is not so safe anymore. So Folger's going to have to respond to the Forge Fiend being able to get a line next turn. The Rhino with the Berserkers are still waiting, and the World Eaters player is being very patient and just making sure that he's going to use that to its best effect. He's going to use this to its best effect later on in the game. The Rhino has moved this direction to deal with some warp spiders. The Daemon Prince has advanced over this way to kind of support because of what was lost up here, to make sure he's supporting the natural expansion attack as well as the center. And the 8-bound are kind of waiting back here because this is enough to deal with everything over here, and we want to make sure we have something that can help with the center or possibly continue to screen and just help us with holding our home objective. So they are kind of staying back. And over here, I want to point out this because this is a pivotal moment, and it's also, I think, a really good learning point with how melee armies are going to set things up. This World Eaters player is a top-level player, and you can see that he's basically put the Lord of Makadas down here. That's going to be able to charge and do mortal wounds on the charge to the Corsairs. When he does some mortal wounds to the Corsairs, he's going to kill a couple of them, ideally, and then the Berserkers will charge into the Corsairs and be able to kind of set up here. And then he can charge the Corsairs with the spawn here and then kill them completely. This will allow the Lord of Makadas, whose base will be kind of like this, to pile in this direction and possibly get into these units both. And then the Berserkers will be able to pile into the Falcon, possibly surround it, and then make it so that Malgan Ra and the Reapers are not able to get out within 3 inches of the Falcon and take extra damage as they come out. And then once the Falcon is dead, they can consolidate into the Dark Reapers and make it even more of a problem for Folger. So this is a beautiful play. This right here is how good aggressive players that are good with their melee armies are going to set things up like this. And it can be really, really rough because right now, the way this is set up, there's a good possibility that the Falcon, the Corsairs, the Swooping Hawks, and most of the Dark Reapers are dead after this attack. One question I had, and I wasn't really sure why Folger didn't use the Swooping Hawks to move up here and basically be another move block for a turn and kind of just hold back a lot of this attack that might happen. The Swooping Hawks are probably going to die anyways, and so why you wouldn't want to just go ahead and use them to move block and keep the Falcon and the Reapers safe and at least try to stop that from happening, because the Lord of Makadas probably isn't killing the Falcon and the Chaos Spawn definitely aren't, and that would probably be the only things that would even have a chance. But even the Chaos Spawn might have difficulty doing anything to get past the Swooping Hawks if we spread out their bases and kind of did this, and they could probably go from about here over to this way. And I'm not really sure why Folger didn't move them on that previous turn to stop this from happening, but I'm sure there was some reason. I don't know. It would be interesting to find out, because I feel like that would have helped limit the amount of damage that the opponent was going to do in this next turn. So as I said, this is a very pivotal, important part of the game, so we'll see how this plays out, because this definitely was a turning point for the game, and we'll see that in the next phase. Another point that I want to note is that Brian, the World Eaters player here, really needs to deal with these warp spiders. They are a big threat by coming over here and shooting into these jackals, which will turn off the sticky objective and will kill, honestly, most of these jackals. Warp spiders are really good at killing jackals, and so Brian really needs to make sure that most of these spiders are dead. If it's just one spider, he's not going to do enough damage to the jackals. But if 3 or 4 of these spiders do end up getting over here, then Brian's going to have a problem. And he really can't afford just to charge the rhino in, because Warhost does have a fallback and shoot stratagem. And so that will be something that could possibly do a bunch of damage to these guys. So he may want to tank shock or do something to take out these spiders to make sure that they are actually taken care of. The World Eaters player has sabotage and extend battle lines. Extend battle lines will be pretty easy for him. Sabotage is going to be a little tough, because if he picks something inside this ruin, it can probably be easily taken care of by some of the units down here. And if he picks these chaos spawn, then the Banshees may come and deal with them. And I think he did pick the Chaos Spawn back here. But over here is what I want to just show. This went horribly for the World Eaters player. I really believe that this play that didn't work out for the World Eaters player actually shifted the game heavily in the favor of the Aeldari player. And basically what happened is when the Lord Invocatus came in and did the mortal wounds, if he rolls a 6, he does D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. And he must have rolled a 6, and then he must have rolled a 3 or higher, because all of the Corsair Void Reapers died. And I don't know the exact distance of where these berserkers were able to get to, but regardless, they are further away from this falcon, and the charge is going to be long enough that it's not going to be quite as easy. And as you can see, they didn't get in. And so the only things that were able to make it in are the Chaos Spawn, and then the Lord Invocatus, of course, was able to pile in to the Hawks and the Falcon. But this is a really big problem for the World Eaters player, because these berserkers now do not get to kill the Falcon. That means that they don't get to surround the Falcon and be a big problem for Malgan Raw and the Dark Reapers. It means that this is going to be easy pickings for some Warp Spiders, Swooping Hawks, or all sorts of different things. And it also means that the Dark Reapers can still come out into a relatively safe area and get the boosted shooting from the Falcon, because it's unlikely that Lord Invocatus and the Spawn can deal with this Falcon. The Lord Invocatus' strength is 8, and so he's probably going to just kill the Swooping Hawks, because the toughness 9 of the Falcon means he's just not really going to efficiently be doing damage into the Falcon. And so this Falcon's going to be able to shoot into the Berserkers. The Dark Reapers are going to be able to shoot into the Berserkers. And this is a really expensive unit between the Master of Executions and all the Berserkers that basically won't be able to have done anything if they are taken care of in the next turn. And so them not being able to charge in and the Corsairs dying because of the mortal wounds, it's very rare that you would not want to do max mortal wounds with something like a charge, but in this case, he really needed the Corsairs to stay alive so that the Berserkers were able to do a charge into them at a very close range. It was only a few inches, probably 4 or so inches, and then be able to pile in to the Falcon with a 6-inch pile in. So it is very, very game-defining moment here that this did not work out. And it was kind of an interesting situation because of how he really didn't want to do max mortal wounds into those Corsairs. So with all that in mind, we'll go ahead and get to the end of this turn. All right, and so now we can see the end. The Chaos Spawn and Lord Invocatus are into the Falcon. And I forgot to mention the Lord Invocatus had taken like 5 damage from, I think, a blaster that was sitting here. When he rapid ingress in this area here, the Corsair Void Reaper's blaster was able to see him and took a shot and actually did 5 wounds to him. So brought him down to just 3 wounds. So that was a pretty big problem for the Lord Invocatus taking that damage. And as we can see, the Falcon is generally fine. I don't know exactly how many wounds that was done to it. I don't think it was very many from the Chaos Spawn at all. And the Berserkers are just sitting there. The Chaos Rhino charged in and killed the 1 spider on the objective, but did not do tank shock. And so there's still 3 spiders alive, which is really bad news, because when these spiders come back here, 3 of them have very good opportunity to do a bunch of damage to these jackals. So that is the end of round 2. Let's take a look at the beginning of round 3. So at the top of round 3, this was the score. Folger had scored his objectives for both 4 and 3 in the last battle round, and then he did get 5 primary at the beginning of his turn because he only held his home objective. The World Eaters player has only scored 2 and 4 for secondaries, and so it's 26 to 41. So let's take a look and see how Folger moved at the beginning of round 3. Okay, starting with this top area, we can see that the Dark Reapers came out, and there is over 9 inches of space between them and the Berserkers because we don't want the Berserkers to surge move into the Dark Reapers. That would be horrible. So make sure that you're respecting the surge move of the Berserkers. Folger also brought in some Warp Spiders and Lycus, and then some Swooping Hawks to help deal with everything that was going on over here. When the Swooping Hawks landed, they did the mortal wounds necessary to take out Lord Invicata, so he is gone. And then this Warp Spider play is beautiful, and I wanted to highlight it as well, because what's happening here is Lycus is going to be able to shoot, and she is also further than 9 inches away from the Berserkers. And so these Berserkers are going to have to head into, probably the Falcon is actually the closest. And so the Berserkers aren't really going to have a good surge move because of how he's spaced his units out. And Lycus is going to be able to give critical hits on 5-ups by shooting into this unit, which will then allow the Dark Reapers with sustained hit stratagem from the Warhost attachment to get sustained hits on 5-ups into these Berserkers. When you take that into account with how much damage these Dark Reapers can do into Space Marine bodies, and on top of that, Malgan Raw just absolutely loves to shred through Berserkers, but really any kind of Space Marine, especially when he has sustained hits, and especially when he has sustained hits on 5-ups, it can really allow him to do a lot of damage. And when you top that with the Falcon shooting into the Berserkers and giving the Dark Reapers full rerolls to wound, that means that Malgan's devastating wounds can really come into effect and do a ton of damage to this unit. And the beautiful thing about this play is not only did he pull all of that off, but he strung these spiders out so that they can charge into the Chaos Spawn here. And then Lycus and the Exarch will be able to get into the Chaos Spawn and most likely kill the Chaos Spawn as well. So that means that the Swooping Hawks come in, they take out the Lord of Mikadas, and because we're not moving the Falcon so that the Falcon can shoot and allow the Dark Reapers to get their rerolls to wound, that means we can't really shoot the Chaos Spawn, so we have to charge and fight and kill it, and we don't have a lot of things that can do that outside of Lycus. But we needed Lycus's shooting into the Berserkers, but we couldn't get too close to them by bringing Lycus in here because then the Berserkers just do their surge move into Lycus. So Lycus had to stay further back. And because of the way Folger spaced this out and played it perfectly, he was able to shoot into the Berserkers with Lycus and everything that he needed to, and then make this nice short charge into the Chaos Spawn after the fact to help kill the Chaos Spawn with Lycus and the Exarch. And he even has Malgan Raw, which has some decent attacks to also come in, charge, and kill some of these Chaos Spawn just in case Lycus and the Exarch happen to whiff or something. And so that was an incredible play by Folger. I think it was very masterful, and you can see, again, a lot of player skill in plays like this. Now, since the Forge Fiend did move this direction, is now here and can show up this way and take shots down the line here, Folger moved the Wave Serpent like this to be able to be on the objective, just to put some extra OC, because we don't have a lot left back here. We have a squad of Hawks, and then we have Eldrad, and that's really it. And so just getting some extra OC on the objective isn't a bad thing, just in case the opponent somehow gets something over here. And we always have to be cognizant of the threat of these Berserkers coming out 3 inches and then doing an advance and then doing a charge. And if they can get here, we just want as much OC onto this as we can. He also brought the Fire Dragons out to take shots and killed the Rhino. So I did skip a little ahead here. The Rhino was destroyed by the Fire Dragons. And importantly, Jane Czar has now moved from here up to here and is ready to try to charge and attack the Chaos Spawn on this objective, which would be great because it means that the World Eaters player won't control this objective, hopefully, if everything goes to plan, because if we shoot these Berserkers and kill them, and we charge Lycus and we kill the Chaos Spawn, and then she consolidates onto the objective, the opponent won't have that objective, the opponent won't have the center objective, And the opponent won't have their natural expansion if we get Janezar and the Banshees up there. And to top it off, the Warp Spiders did fall back and shoot the Jackals and killed all but 2 of them. And the problem is the Jackals can't even move, because as soon as they would either move or try to charge, the Warp Spiders just finish them off. And so now the World Eaters player has to do something about these spiders. Probably have to bring back the 8-bound or the Daemon Prince, but most likely the 8-bound to come back and just make sure that the spiders die, because the Jackals can't do it themselves. The World Eaters player has to make sure that Folger, after the fact, doesn't start to burn this objective, because that could be a massive score. And he has to send something back to deal with it now. So that was pretty bad for the World Eaters player, on top of everything else that already happened up here. The World Eaters player does still have a lot of damage between the 8-bound and the berserkers, with Kharn inside this rhino threatening so much of the board. So the game is definitely not over yet, but it's definitely already starting to fall in favor of the Aeldari player. So with all that in mind, let's take a look and see how shooting went. So at the end of the shooting phase, again, the rhino is gone, and you can see that all of the berserkers are gone, which makes complete sense when you have Lycus shooting already. You had Malgan Raw with sustained hits and critical hitting on 5-ups. Full rerolls to wound because of the Falcon. It's very likely that you just pick up all those berserkers because of all that damage. It's crazy. And so now we still have to deal with the Chaos Spawn with a charge, and we have the Chaos Spawn over here that we need to deal with a charge. The Fire Dragons will be getting back into the Wave Serpent, of course, and that will basically be it for the end of Folger's turn. So let's see how those charges went. So as you can see, the Warp Spiders and Malgan Raw both charged in, killed the spawn. Lycus consolidated onto the objective, and Malgan Raw and the Reapers will be able to get back into the Falcon eventually. And Janezar and the Banshees charged and made their charge and killed the Chaos Spawn, but also were able to come around and then do a consolidation move into the Forge Fiend, which is absolutely brutal for the Forge Fiend, because the Forge Fiend, when it's set up this way with the 3 blast weapons, has very bad melee. And on top of that, can't shoot its guns into the Banshees because they are blast weapons, and you can't shoot blast into combat like this. So the Forge Fiend is in big trouble because there's no way for the Forge Fiend to fall back and shoot. And so the Banshees tying it up is very detrimental for the Forge Fiend. The Forge Fiends still haven't even taken a shot this entire game so far. Folger's been able to either evade them or tie them up in this case, to where they're not going to be able to shoot anything. And so that is really rough for the World Eaters player. So this is the end of the 3rd turn for Folger, and he was able to accomplish like all of his goals. It's starting to look very good for him. There's still some big threats on the board between all the berserkers and the rhino, and there's still some 8-bound, and their Forge Fiend is still alive, although it is tied up. And so there's still things that the World Eaters player can do, but you can kind of see that the resources are starting to get slim, and the game is going to continue to only get harder for the World Eaters player. So let's see what he does in response. Okay, so this is the end of the movement phase for the World Eaters player. Now you can see that there's nothing over here because there's just no way to really attack it anymore. Kind of have to give up on that. But he did send out the berserkers. They advanced, getting ready for the charge. The 8-bound have also come out, and the Daemon Prince have come out as well to deal with these spiders. These 8-bound went backwards to try to deal with these warp spiders, and then the rhino that dropped off the berserkers just moved this way to try to help deal with Janezar and the Banshees. But this is going to just be a continual issue, because the Banshees will be able to fight first and may actually kill this rhino because it already took damage, so it's down to 5 wounds. But on top of that, even if the Forge Fiend does fall back, the Banshees will be able to tag it again in the next turn, and they will eventually kill it in melee because they actually will do some decent damage to it whenever they roll good on the wound roll. And so this is just a losing area for the World Eaters player as well. And so he's really banking on this part of his army just carrying the rest of the game and getting him back into the game, because it's not looking good right now. When you just take a look at the board control, the World Eaters player scored 0 on their primary objectives this turn. And so that is not looking good either. That's never something that you want to see, is a 0 on primary. World Eaters player did draw Cleanse and Defend Stronghold. He is not getting good secondaries just throughout the game. Defend Stronghold he'll be able to do once he kills these spiders, but it's not really something he wanted to have to worry about. And then there's no way he can afford to use units to do cleansing when he's got to use all of his resources just to fight back. He's got to start doing some serious damage into that Aeldari army. So let's take a look and see how everything went for him in the charge and fight phase. Okay, so he ended up charging the spiders with the 8-bound, and then he also charged the jackals into the spiders. After that, he was able to get the Demon Prince into these spiders. He was able to get the berserkers and dual charge into the corsairs here, and then also into the wave serpent. And so that is not going to be good for the wave serpent. Now, importantly, the 8-bound also made their charge, and I believe for his blessings, he actually got reroll charges, which was a good thing because it really helps the reliability of making those charges. But as soon as this wave serpent's taken out by the berserkers, the fire dragons have to come out, and then the 8-bound are going to be able to pile in and fight into those fire dragons, which is not really what we want to have happen. And so as you can see, the World Eaters player is putting a ton of pressure and could do a ton of damage to us. If there is a chance that we roll bad on our saves and he rolls good on his attacks, the Corsairs will be gone, the Wave Serpent will be gone, and then the 8-bound will go into the Fire Dragons and might wipe them all the way down to Fuegan. But in all likelihood, what's going to happen here is the Berserkers will kill the Void Reavers, no problem. We'll kill the Wave Serpent, most likely, and then the 8-bound will be able to pile in and do a bunch of damage to the Fire Dragons. So absolutely doing some serious damage over here. Now that the Banshees are not protecting this, you can see how quickly he immediately went in to deal with all this, and now the Banshees are over here. I think there was a tank shock here, and so a lot of the Banshees are dead now. The only thing is that they still have Jane Czar and the Exarch, and both of these vehicles are tied up, and so there's just not much that is going to be able to happen here. The opponent also made sure that he didn't fall back with the Forge Fiend, because if he falls back, then the Banshees can use the Battle Focus token to move, and that could possibly get them out of range of the Rhino, which would mean they wouldn't be able to get tank shocked, and then the Banshees would be able to just charge back into the Forge Fiend and tie it up anyways. Now the Rhino's even further away. So it just isn't a good situation for them if they can't charge in here, because they need to get this Rhino on the objective to make sure as well that it's contested. So this was all an important part of how the game went as well. But it looks like just Jane Czar and these Banshees are going to be doing enough damage and just tying enough things up over here that it's just going to ruin the opponent's play on this objective. Okay, we can see the Warp Spiders are dead. The Daemon Prince took out those Warp Spiders, and the Howling Banshees actually ended up killing the Rhino and then just consolidating into or piling back into the Forge Fiend, as the Forge Fiend is still tied up. Now the Rhino is dead. This Forge Fiend is basically not going to be able to do anything for this game, unfortunately, for the World Eaters player. He didn't even get to use the Forge Fiends at all, and so that was a great job by Folger, the Aeldari player, to just make sure that the shooting and really good blast and rapid-fire attacks, high-volume attacks, were just nullified by either good positioning or careful engagement with some melee units. So this was really impressive that the Forge Fiends literally didn't shoot the entire game. Now what you see happened over here is the Berserkers did take care of the Corsairs, no problem, and the Wave Serpent is gone, and the Fire Dragons came out, and now there's only Fuegan and the Exarch, and I think there was actually one more Fire Dragon when I looked back. There's Fuegan, the Exarch, and a Fire Dragon left. The 8-bound were just absolutely wrecked by Fuegan. And Fuegan has a very good profile into the 8-bound, and because it's very likely that the Fire Dragons still had the tokens left, because they probably didn't need to use them to make sure they made the kills that they did, because they only shot a Rhino and then some Chaos Spawn, and so there's probably very low chance that Folger had to use any tokens. He's probably able to use the tokens with the Fire Axe, which has AP 4, and just absolutely melts the 8-bound, puts them on their 5-up invulns, and every fail is a dead 8-bound. And so Fuegan actually cleans up all of the 8-bound after the 8-bound kill most of the Fire Dragons. So 8 Fire Dragons die, Fuegan hits back and kills the 3 8-bound. So that's absolutely terrible for the World Eaters player as well. And the Berserkers here are still a threat, but they are again kind of now out in the open. They haven't been able to do anything else besides kill the Wave Serpent and Corsairs, which is some stuff. It's like 185 points, which is pretty close to what the berserkers cost. But when you include Kharn, this unit has not gotten its points value out of the game yet. And when you consider that the other berserkers got no value, you can see how this game really is going in the Aeldari players' favor. Pretty crazy how the dice worked out in this game, but both players doing fantastic plays, making really good decisions, and had really done such an amazing job with this game. It's the reason I wanted to review it, because I just thought there was a lot of value in just taking a quick look at all of the different things that they did at key moments and trying to get an understanding of why they did it. Hopefully it will help you guys in your decision-making processes and how you approach games, especially as Eldar going into these very aggressive melee-oriented armies. I think this was a great game to kind of get some lessons. So as you can see, top of round 4, Folger brings in the Swooping Hawks to make it so the Daemon Prince can't interact with anything over here. The Falcon drops off the Dark Reapers again with Malgan Raw to help just absolutely melt these Berserkers. Fuegan can do his sustained attack. He's got a couple Fire Dragons to also shoot. Lycus Flicker jumps over here to get her shooting into the Berserkers, and then Eldrad as well, able to doom them. And so there's really just not a chance that these Berserkers survive all the shooting between Falcon, Fire Dragons, Malgan Raw, Fuegan, Lycus, Eldrad. I mean, there's no way with sustained hits most likely on the Dark Reapers as well. It's just absolutely no way that these guys survive sitting on the open like this. The Swooping Hawks do some mortal wounds to the Daemon Prince. I don't know how many, but they tie him up. They'll be shooting him, doing a little bit more damage. We have Swooping Hawks sitting back here scoring. We have Eldrad that's going to be staying on the point. And we have Jane Zark tying up the Forge Fiend. And these Jackals and 8-bound back here are just out of the game, basically. There's almost no way they can get back into the game at this point. It's round 4, and so they were effectively taken care of as well. And so it was pretty much getting to the end game here. This was the movement, and then we'll just take a quick look at the end of the shooting, and then we'll go into the recap. All right, and basically the Berserkers all died from that shooting. The Dark Reapers went back in the Falcon. I don't know if the Daemon Prince actually died here because the players started talking it out. I don't know if he just picked the Daemon Prince off the board or if the Swooping Hawks actually finished him off. That would be pretty wild if they did, because he's got a 2-up save, so it's unlikely that they did, but you never know between the mortal wounds, and then maybe he made some failed saves. But regardless, this was like the end of the game. The Forge Fiend moves to help score some points so that the World Eaters player could score 10 points at the end of the game. The Janezar and Banshee couldn't quite kill the Forge Fiend, but the Aeldari player is able to burn an objective. They're able to control the rest of the board, and these units back here weren't able to really do anything for the rest of the game. So that's basically the end of the game. We'll take a look at the score here. Score ended up being 82-49, which sounds like and kind of seems like a pretty big point difference when you think about 33 points. But again, if you just consider how close the World Eaters player was to doing major damage and basically taking care of the Falcon and Malgan Raw and the Reapers, which affected so much of the rest of the game, this game could have been completely different. But it was masterfully played by both players, and by the end of the game, the Aeldari player did have a lot more assets left over, a lot more units and capability, and this game was, I think, in one sense, a masterclass of how to deal with the aggression of a World Eaters player type army. And so I hope this was beneficial. Let me know in the comments if you liked this review or like this style. If there's anything different that you would like to see or be done. I just thought it was a really interesting game that people could glean some good information from, and just wanted to kind of review it. And I hope this is something that's beneficial for you. I love getting feedback, so let me know if it's something that you would like to see more of, or if there's other matchups in specific that you would like to see. I want to make sure this is all content that's beneficial for you guys. So thanks for watching. If you haven't yet and you've gotten to the end here, I would greatly appreciate a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to follow and make sure that you are seeing when other videos come out. As we approach 1,000 subscribers, it's very exciting for me to see this channel continue to grow, and I really have felt great about all the feedback. A lot of people telling me that these videos have been helping, and that's really been my goal from the beginning. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to the end, I look forward to talking to you in the next video.